Chapter 2. Michael Patrick Kelly sat by himself in the wagon bed behind the Friedrich family, grabbing the side for support each time the wheels dropped in and out of the ruts and the gullies in the dirt road. The first time the wagon lurched, Mike sprawled on his back with a yelp, and Gunter Friedrich, squeezed up on the front seat between his parents, turned around to look at him with a mocking laugh. Mike hated to be the laughing stock, and he was beginning to dislike Gunter heartily. The next time the wagon bounced so hard that it slapped his backside, Mike met Gunter's stare by puffing out his cheeks and arching his back so his stomach protruded. Gunter's eyes narrowed and he whirled around to face forward. Mike settled back, hoping he wouldn't be bothered by Gunter again on this trip. He'd wished for a loving family, and even though no one would ever replace his best friend and brother Danny, he'd imagined there'd be a boy close to his age who would become his chum. Mike sighed. No such luck with Gunter. The Friedrichs were not the kind of family Mike had pictured when Mr. McNair and Mrs. Banks had described the new lives the orphan train children would lead in the West. Hans Friedrich was balding and heavy. Mike shuddered as he remembered the first sight of Mr. Friedrich, his rounded stomach bulging from underneath his vest, his jowls quivering. He pointed at Mike and demanded of Andrew McNair, the scout who'd found towns that would take the children, "That boy, we want him." Mrs. Friedrich's head bobbed up and down eagerly, her nose like a round button, with her rosy face, and her eyes clear and blue, crinkly at the edges with her shy smile. But she flinched as her husband growled at her. "It's your fault, really, Irma. Because of you, we missed getting a bigger, stronger boy. This boy's what, 9, 10, 11, Mike said, insulted at the guess, and earnestly wishing he weren't so small for his age. Miss Friedrich tugged her shawl more tightly around her shoulders and stammered, The boy only needs some good food to make him grow tall and strong. Why, in no time he'll be like Gunter." She patted her son's arm, but Gunter shook her hand away. Mike glanced at Gunter. He knew immediately he had no desire to be anything like Gunter, who was so fat and pasty, with hair so blonde it was almost white. Gunter's expression was sullen. Mike wondered if he ever smiled. His thick lips were twisted in a pout. At the mention of his name, he scowled at the floor, kicking at an invisible spot with the toe of his shoe, obviously trying to make amends. Mrs. Friedrich smiled and said, "How fine it will be to have another boy in the house. He'll be like a brother to you, Gunter." "Don't want a new brother," Gunter mumbled. "Brothers only cause trouble." Now, Miss Friedrich smiled nervously. "Soon the two of you will be the best of friends." "No, we won't," Gunter hissed, his voice so low Mike wondered if he was the only one who'd heard him. As soon as Andrew left Mike and the Friedrichs to get acquainted, Mr. Friedrich folded his arms across his chest, frowned at Mike, and said in a stern, loud voice, "So, you were a pickpocket, thief?" Mike cringed as people nearby turned to stare at him. "Well, yes, I was, but I promised my mother and myself that I'd never steal again," he replied, "and I hope you believe me." "I believe you," Mr. Friedrich answered, "because if you steal again, you'll be beaten. You won't like the beatings, so you won't steal." The corners of his mouth tilted upward smugly. "I know how to handle boys like you." "Ah!" Mrs. Friedrich gasped, as if she shot a quick glance at her husband. Mike noticed a fearful look in her eyes. Gunter snickered and grinned a wicked grin. Mike's face grew hot with embarrassment. He wished he could punch Gunter right in that puffy round nose. He wondered how old Gunter was. Maybe 13, 14. He was taller and heavier than Mike. Mike quickly decided that punching Gunter might not be a very good idea. After all, Gunter was part of his new family, and Mike usually got along with everyone he met, so he was surprised by his immediate dislike of Gunter. He decided to try and control his bad first impression. Now, as he sat in the wagon bed, Mike thought about the bullies he'd known and had run-ins with in New York City. He had never let one of them get the best of him. There was no way he was going to let Gunter get him down. He looked at the landscape of the wagon, plodding on, and the good spirits began to return. Low rolling hills, many of them scattered with stalks and remnants of crops, a few still thick with high grain, some fragrant with the earthy smell of newly turned soil, stretched out around him. Golden-leaved trees were interspersed with deep green pines, and behind a wood rail fence Mike spotted a neat small garden, bursting with tangled vines and pumpkins, larger than those he'd seen in the city's greengrocer's stalls. Until he left New York City on the Orphan Train, Mike had never seen open country. He missed the bustle and action of the city streets, but he supposed this quiet land might have something to recommend it to. He wished it offered more excitement for a boy his age. He wished he were 16 instead of 11, so he could ride for the Pony Express, galloping his horse through heat and snow, racing from whooping hordes of Indians to save the mail. Wouldn't that be a grand way to live? Faster, and with the way station just ahead. He'd leap from his horse, slap the saddlebags across the fresh mount, jump into the saddle. Nothing would stop him. He'd reach to tug an arrow from his shoulder. Mike sighed and shifted away from the long splinter in the sideboard that was digging into his back. Maybe he'd like working on a farm. He promised Ma he was going to work hard and do his best. A sudden wave of loneliness so strong it caused him to shiver brought Ma's face to his mind, and he could see a terrible sorrow in her eyes. "I'll make you proud of me yet, Ma," he vowed. Mike glanced toward the front seat of the wagon and noticed Mr. Friedrich was scowling at his wife. He couldn't hear what was being said, but it sounded like the growl and snap of a mean, hungry dog. Mike hated to admit it to himself, but Mr. Friedrich frightened him. Mrs. Friedrich wasn't so bad, so who knew? Maybe if he minded his manners and did his work well, he might even get along with them both just fine. Maybe all the Friedrichs, even Gunter, would turn out to be better than he first thought them. Mike stared up at their rounded backs. The three of them were packed as closely together on the wagon seat as sausages in a crate. Before he knew it, his mind was racing with the words of a ditty. 3 fat sausages, Gunter in the middle. Fry 'em in the griddle with the hay diddle diddle. Pleased with his rhyme, Mike grinned to himself. Someday he'd sing the song for his sister Frances. Wouldn't she get a good laugh from it? Mike pictured his older sister at their party. She'd cut her long dark hair with a penknife after she heard that some of the families might take 2 boys. She had posed as a boy, desperately hoping to keep their youngest brother Petey with her, and her ruse had succeeded. Thinking they were adopting brothers, the family had chosen Frances and Petey together. Would Mike ever see Frances again? Pushing away the thoughts that caused his throat to tighten with pain, he stretched out in the wagon and laid his head on his arms over and over. He sang the new ditty to himself until he fell asleep. Hush, he'll hear you, Hans. He won't hear anything. He's sleeping. Why must you talk of Ulrich? The sharp fear of Mrs. Friedrich's voice jabbed Mike to wakefulness, but he kept his eyes closed, afraid to open them. Boy's a thief, as Ulrich was. Mr. Friedrich replied, Please, Hans, don't compare them. Give this boy a chance to prove. A chance? Ulrich had every chance, yet what good did it do him? Papa, when you talk of Ulrich, you get so angry it frightens me, Gunter whined. Mrs. Friedrich began to whimper too. Remember, Hans, what your anger has led to in the past, she said. Don't admonish me, Irma, Mr. Friedrich sparred. It's important you understand my plans. But Mrs. Friedrich hadn't finished. No matter what he had done, Ulrich should not have died. Hush! The word came out like an explosion. The wagon seat creaked as someone turned to look at Mike. It was all he could do to lie quietly, pretending to sleep, and swallow the cry of terror that rose in his throat. Who was Ulrich, and how had he died? He didn't hear, Papa. He's still asleep, Gunter reported. Mike strained to listen again, but the Friedrichs lowered their voices. Because of their heavy accented speech, Mike could only grasp a word or two. What had Mrs. Friedrich meant when she said that no matter what he had done, Ulrich should not have died? Had someone killed him? Why? Mike was sure of only 2 things. Ulrich was a thief who had died because of what he had done, and Mr. Friedrich thought Mike was just like Ulrich. Mike's heart started pounding. He wanted to leap from the wagon and run as fast as he could back to St. Joseph and the safety of Andrew McNair. But the Friedrichs would catch up to him, and then they would not only call him a thief, but a runaway. He tried to make himself relax and breathe evenly, so it would be easier to think. Since he did not really know what had happened to Ulrich, and considering that his own situation was not too good, it would be foolish to panic. The best plan would be to try to live with the Friedrichs, as Mr. McNair and Mrs. Banks expected him to do, but to keep his eyes open and stay alert. The wagon stopped so suddenly Mike rolled against the end of the wagon bed, banging his knees and elbows. He sat up with a start to gape wide-eyed at the large house and an even larger barn. Who would have thought the Friedrichs were swells? The 2-story house gleamed with fresh white paint. Its windows sparkled in the late afternoon light, and even the deep orange marigolds that lined the front of the house were planted in tidy rows. The front doors and the shutters were bright blue, and at the windows Mike could see lace curtains. Beyond the house and the barn stood the privy and some large and small outbuildings. Impressed, Mike whistled through his teeth. Mrs. Friedrich awkwardly climbed from her perch, and Gunter remained on the wagon seat with his father. Out with you, Mr. Friedrich called to Mike, who managed to grab his small packet of belongings and scramble from the wagon before it started up again with a jerk. 2 spotted mutts came running around to sniff at Mike. Wolf, you grown up, gone with you, Mr. Friedrich yelled, and they quickly turned tail, dodging the hitching post, and ran around the corner of the barn. Come, Mike, hurry, Mrs. Friedrich said. Hans will want his food ready and on the table as soon as he's taken care of the horses. I know how hungry he'll be. Mike ran to catch up. I'm hungry too, he said. We haven't eaten since breakfast. Ah, she cried. I should have thought. Well, no matter now. We'll have your stomach filled soon enough. Just as they reached the side of the house, it was opened by a tall young woman with blonde braids woven into a crown on top of her head. The sleeves of her cotton dress were rolled high on her tanned arms, and her stiff white apron nearly covered her faded skirt, which brushed the floor. She stood aside and let Mrs. Friedrich pass, but she looked Mike over carefully. You bring home a minnow, not a fish, she said, and winked at Mike. Hush, Marta, Mrs. Friedrich hissed and glanced toward the barn. Mr. Friedrich was upset enough because I caused us to be late, and the larger boys were all taken. If he hears you say that, it'll only mean more trouble. Mike's mouth opened in amazement as he glanced around the room. The kitchen was only a little smaller than the room that had been the Kellys' entire home in New York City. The copper pots and cooking tools hung on the wall gleamed in the light from the fire in the huge fireplace. And just a few steps from the fireplace was a large wood-burning stove. 2 gigantic cupboards stood against the far wall next to the broad working table. A smaller table was placed near the side window, and on it a blue bowl that held a clump of bright marigolds. A faint odor of lye soap clung to the bleached wood floor. Mike had never seen anything to match this. How he wished he could show it to Ma and Megan and Frances. Wouldn't their eyes pop? Mrs. Friedrich tugged off her coat and gloves and untied the ribbons on her hat that had become buried between her chins. We must hurry and get supper on the table, she insisted. Since it's the cold, supper is all but done, Marta said calmly. She looked at Mike, but continued to speak to Mrs. Friedrich in the same rhythmic accent as the rest of the family shared. What's the name for this young carrot top? Mike took a step forward. He knew at once he liked Marta and her friendly smile, in spite of the fact that she had called him a minnow and a carrot top. I'm Michael Patrick Kelly, he said. Everyone calls me Mike. He turned to Mrs. Friedrich, who was smoothing the folds of her voluminous dark skirt, and added, I didn't know you had a daughter, ma'am. Marta darted a quick, sharp glance at Mrs. Friedrich and gave a wry smile. Hardly a daughter, she muttered. And before Mrs. Friedrich could answer, there was a loud stamping of feet on the outer stoop, and in a moment a tall, rangy man entered the room. The angles of his face were sharp against his ragged dark hair, and his eyes were deep-set in his brows. Mike guessed him to be nearly 40. Mrs. Friedrich, he acknowledged, and then turned to Marta with a bow. You heard me knock the soil from my boots, Marta, so now you won't be able to complain that I dirtied your clean floors. His gaze came to rest on Mike. Reuben, you haven't met young Michael Kelly, Marta said. Mike, this is Reuben Starkey. Reuben's eyebrows shot up. This small twig of a boy you went to St. Joseph to fetch? The one who's to help work on the farm? Mrs. Friedrich put a hand on Mike's shoulder and pursed her lips in a matter. That he's small. Michael's a poor, wretched orphan, and we've rescued him from a dreadful life. Reuben's eyes lit with a mischievous twinkle. Poor naked wretches, whoever so you are, that bide the pelting of this pitiless storm, he said. Mike couldn't stand it any longer, talking about him as though he weren't even there, and saying such rotten things. You've got no right to call me a naked wretch, he told Reuben. I've got my clothes on, same as you. I didn't mean to offend you, Michael. I was merely quoting from a play by William Shakespeare, Reuben said. Reuben's had schooling, Marta explained. He's always reading poetry. Reuben held out a hand. I'm pleased to make your acquaintance, Michael. Mike shook hands with Reuben. I'm glad to meet you too, Mr. Starkey. Mike turned to examine the room and nodded with satisfaction. I see how it is now, he said. I knew this house was too big for just one family. How many families live here? Marta put an arm around Mike's shoulders and pulled him closer to the fire at the big fireplace. Reuben is the hired hand. He lives in a cabin out behind the barn. I have a room under the stairs, because I'm working as the Friedrich serving girl. Oh, Marta, Mrs. Friedrich's hands fluttered nervously. You're like family. I'm a serving girl, Marta said. I came to the Friedrichs from Germany to this country and agreed to work to pay for my passage. Marta's words were resentful, and Mike felt tension in the room. He tried to change the subject. Will I live in the cabin too, like Reuben? Of course not, Mrs. Friedrich said. You're to live with us as a son. You'll have your own room upstairs. It's a very nice room. I'm sure you'll find no fault with it. Mrs. Friedrich didn't sound convincing. And behind her employer's back, Marta rolled her eyes and shrugged her shoulders at Mike. He didn't understand why. But Mrs. Friedrich's attention had shifted to Reuben. Why aren't you in the barn helping Mr. Friedrich with the horses, she asked. There's a little more to do for the horses, Reuben said, so I thought I'd use the opportunity to meet my new helper. Mrs. Friedrich sighed. If only you had the same industry as Mr. Friedrich, how much more you could accomplish. Reuben made a low bow and said, there could only be one like Mr. Friedrich. Mike saw a twinkle in his eyes, but apparently Mrs. Friedrich didn't. Yeah, she said, you're right. She made a little shooing motion with her hands. Well, go with you, back to the barn, where you can be of help. As Reuben left, Marta said, I'll show Mike his room now. It'll give him a chance to take off his jacket and wash before he eats. Yes, Mrs. Friedrich murmured, of course. Glancing toward the back door, she urged, but hurry, both of you. When Mr. Friedrich comes in, we must all be ready to sit at the table. Mike's room was small compared to what he had just seen, only large enough for a bed with a plain wooden bedstead, a slatted chair, and a low, red, painted chest. On the chest rested an oil lamp, a china pitcher filled with water in a bowl. Curtains hung at the window, and Mike lifted them to see the barn, its big doors opened wide. Your room's not much, Marta said. I made sure that you had one of the best down quilts on your bed. The room looks grand to me, Mike assured her. He pushed down the bedding, his hands almost disappearing in the thickly mounded quilt. Oh, he said, I never have felt anything so soft. Marta, Mrs. Friedrich called sharply. Mrs. Friedrich's afraid of her husband, Mike blurted out. Oh, that man's all noise, Marta said. He likes to bluster like a cold north wind. She sniffed. Mrs. Friedrich should have stood up to him in the beginning. A wife should never cower in fear. Aren't you afraid of him? Mike asked. No, I'm not, Marta said, but Mike had heard her hesitate. He's tried to shout at me, but I told him if he did again, I would leave. He knows I mean what I say, and I'm a hard worker and honest, so he doesn't want me to go. And you have to pay for your passage. She smiled. That's been taken care of. I'm staying on until someday I find a good man to marry. Then I'll have a home of my own. She ruffled Mike's hair and teased. Too bad you're not 10 years older with your own farmland and horses and cows. Unfortunately, a poor orphan could never be a good marriage prospect. I'm not an orphan, Mike said. I have a mother. After Dad died, Ma couldn't take care of us all. So she sent us west to find homes where we'd have better lives, enough food to eat. She wanted to help us, so she gave us away. For just an instant, Marta's blue eyes clouded with pity, and she reached out to touch Mike's shoulder. But Mrs. Friedrich called from below the stairs. Marta, where are you? Marta whispered to Mike, there's no doubt you'll get plenty of good food here. Mr. Friedrich is known as a stingy man, but not when it comes to what goes in his stomach. Come. Forget the washing. We'd better hurry. Wait, Mike said, you've already been kind to me, so I hope you'll tell me something. I've got to know. He lowered his voice to whisper, please tell me. Did he ever kill someone? Marta gasped and took a step backward. Why do you ask me that? On our way here from St. Joseph, I overheard him talking about someone named Ulrich, who was dead. Marta bent to clasp Mike's arms, holding him tightly so tightly he wanted to cry out, "Whatever you do, never again mention Ulrich's name." "But Mr. Friedrich said I was like Ulrich. Please tell me, did he kill him? If he killed Ulrich, he could—" "That's enough." Marta's face turned gray. "Marta!" Mrs. Friedrich called, even more insistently. Marta released Mike and, racing out of the room, clattered down the stairs. Mike followed, trying to keep up with Marta's quick steps. At the foot of the stairs, she grabbed his hand and pulled him down the hallway toward the dining room, where Mrs. Friedrich waited, her hands clasped at her waist. With one quick movement, Marta smoothed down Mike's hair, ran through the room, and disappeared in the direction of the kitchen.